Glamper True Crime Podcast. My name is Amy. Welcome to my show. Hope everyone is having a wonderful evening. Hope you can all hear me. All right. Today has been a very emotional day for me. I was supposed to go to Jonesboro today, but I had to cancel my trip, and it's just I don't even know how to explain it. You know, I call myself an injustice activist because that is what brought me into true crime. The injustice that I have witnessed with the two cases in this world that are nearest and dearest to me, and that is the case of the West Memphis Three and the case of the boys on the tracks. "30 years of injustice that I've watched. And so please, everyone, hey, Mississippi Granny, Griff, Shalama. Sorry, if I didn't pronounce your name correct. Welcome, everybody. These two cases are the nearest and dearest to me in the world, and they're very emotional for me. So please respect and that this is an emotional thing for me. Today, Damien Echols of the West Memphis Three appeared in court in Crittenden County, Arkansas, to request that evidence collected in his 1994 case be tested. He was requesting to have further testing done on evidence that was collected back in 94, 93 actually. They didn't go to trial till 94, but it was they wanted to do a new MVAC testing. And so Damien appeared in court today with his attorney, Patrick Benka, requesting that he would like to have this done. And Judge Tanya Burnett, I've still got my mind on Judge David Burnett, who denied justice in this case for 18 years. Judge Tanya Alexander denied Damien's request today for testing. She said the reason for her denial is that in order to request further DNA testing, you have to still be in prison. Yeah. Some of you may know, some of you may not know. Actually, Damien, Jason, and Jessie were released in 2011 under the Alford plea, which I will get to in just a minute. But they so she tells Damien that his request is denied because he still has to be in prison in order to request DNA testing. Now, for all the stupid people out there, and for this stupid judge, Damien was convicted and sentenced to death by lethal injection. Have you forgotten that? This man would already be dead. There is no doubt in my mind. I'm sorry, I got distracted. Have we forgotten that this man was sentenced to death? And in my mind, that he would have already been executed by now if he were still in prison. They had exhausted all their appeals. Jesse, Jason, and Damien. Damien actually had the most appeals because he was sentenced to death. So a lot of things were done under Damien because he had the most appeals. But all the appeals were exhausted. But in 2010, after much money was raised to look at the evidence in this case and hire experts and whatnot, yes, that was the only option they had, was the Alford plea. These experts studied this case extensively and determined that much of the evidence that was presented in court in the original trials was bullshit. Frank Peretti, who was the medical examiner, and he is the medical examiner who came in after Fahmy Malek. And what did I tell you, Griff? Excuse me just a minute. I'm sorry, I was distracted again. Where was I? the evidence, Frank Peretti, who was the medical examiner, he came in after Fahmy Malek. And Fahmy Malek was the medical examiner who made all these obnoxious causes of death and whatnot in the Boys on the Tracks case and many other cases that were just bogus. This a complete liar. And Frank Peretti came in behind him, and he wasn't no better. He wasn't much better. But Frank Peretti, testified in court that they had mutilated, that Christopher Byers had been mutilated, that his little boy private parts had been severed with a knife and mutilated. But his testimony, you can't, oh, that's fine. His testimony in this case, he could not conclusively determine, exactly what had happened. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm kind of skipping around. I got distracted, just as I told you I would, Griff and Pam. Let me start with the infamous Alford plea. How about that? I was there. I was there in Crittenden County for this infamous Alford plea. And the reason why the Alford plea was made was because the Supreme Court had heard, they had presented all this new evidence to the Supreme Court that contradicted all of Frank Peretti's findings and testimony and whatnot, and determined that, Christopher Byers was not mutilated, that it was from animal predation, that it was done from animal predation, and much of the wounds, some of the wounds, on these kids were from animal predation and who knows what. But all this evidence contradicted this main storyline that the prosecution tried to present of these satanic worshipers who killed these 3 little boys and mutilated this one little boy and drank his blood and all kinds of horrific shit. So it blew the prosecution's theory completely out of the water. There was no DNA evidence whatsoever that connected Damien, Jason, or Jesse to these crimes. There was no forensic evidence, nothing. Their whole trial was based on circumstantial evidence. If you really watch and pay attention it was all based on circumstantial evidence and Damien Echols' weirdness and the belief that he was this occult leader in West Memphis. So in 2011, Patrick Benka contacted Dusty McDaniel, and they all got together and came to the conclusion that if Damien, Jesse, and Jason got a new trial, that they would be found innocent. That was the fear. Now, it was good for the defendants, of course, but it was bad for the prosecution and the state of Arkansas. And the state of Arkansas was not going to take that chance. So, Stephen Braga, one of Damien's attorneys, came up with this plea deal called the Alford plea. And the Alford plea it's not hardly ever used. It's no end. How do I even say it? It's no means to no end. It doesn't resolve anything. But what the Alford plea is that Damien, Jason, and Jesse acknowledge that the state of Arkansas has enough evidence to convict them, and they acknowledge that, but it allows them to maintain their innocence even though they are pleading guilty to this crime. It's confused. It's kind of like a nolo contender, or pleading no contest. But when you plead no contest, you're not acknowledging that you're innocent. You're not acknowledging that you're guilty. You're just not acknowledging it, period. But you suffer the consequences of someone who is guilty. But with the Alford plea, even though you're pleading guilty and you're saying, okay, yes, I realize that the state of Arkansas has enough evidence that could convict me and send me to prison, but I'm innocent, and I maintain that I'm innocent. And it, like I said, it's just a means. There's no resolution in it. That's the only way I know how to explain it. And to make someone plead guilty to a crime that they're saying they didn't commit is wrong. That's not what our justice system is built on. And John Mark Byers, God rest his soul, and Pam Hobbs. Mark Byers is the father of Christopher Byers, and Pam Hobbs is the mother of Stevie Branch. After they saw the evidence that came to light back in 2010, they changed their minds about the guilt of Damien and Jessie and Jason. And all they wanted was to know the truth. And I stood next to Mark Byers that day in 2011. And the pain in that man's face and the pain in that man's voice, what they were doing was fucking wrong. In that it brought his son no justice. No justice. Terry Hobbs can eat a dick for all I care. Terry Hobbs was a horrible husband. He was a horrible husband. Now, do I think he's guilty of this? I don't know. And I'm not going to, to make that accusation. That the evidence is weak. But do I think he is a shithead? Yes, I do. I've also talked to his daughter, Amanda, and I won't even get into any of that. That poor girl's been through hell. That whole family's been through hell. Pam's been through hell. Mark Byers has been through hell. Todd and Dana Moore, we don't talk about. They choose to believe that the three are guilty, and they are Michael Moore's parents. That is their choice to believe, and I respect them, and I respect that. But think of it like this. The guys you claim who are devil worshippers had to make a deal with the devil of Arkansas to save Damien's life. To save Damien from being executed. And that's exactly what that Alford plea was all about. Jason Baldwin was very reluctant. He did not want to do it. But Eddie Vedder sat down and talked with Jason and explained to Jason that this was Damien's really only chance at survival. And that although, he knows it's wrong, Damien knows it's wrong, and everyone knows that this is wrong on behalf of the state of Arkansas, Jason went through with it to save his best friend's life. And, much of what was done to more or less railroad these guys and convict them and keep them convicted and whatnot, some of the shit that the prosecution did and the lengths that they went to really fall apart through Jason Baldwin. And I want to share with y'all some of the shit that they did to convict these guys. And just how far underhanded and dirty they went with all this. Let's start with the narrative. The narrative of the satanic panic. And that narrative comes from Damien. Jerry Driver, who was a juvenile officer, did not like Damien. And Damien was no saint. I'm not sitting here trying to say that he was ever a saint. He was a troubled kid. He had issues. But it didn't make him a murderer. But the day after these boys were found dead, Jerry Driver told the West Memphis police, "Oh my God, Damien Echols has killed somebody." He believed that these killings were the work of Damien Echols, and that he had done this because he was a Satan worshiper and all this crazy mess. Now, where they came up with the idea that Satan worshipers had committed these crimes is still beyond me. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I mean, yes, someone very evil did this. Stripped these 3 kids naked and hog-tied them and beat them and threw them in a drainage ditch. It don't get no more horrible than that. But what about that says satanic worship? What about that crime scene says that devil worshipers committed this crime? I still don't know. Still don't understand that. I mean, the first thought that comes to my mind is a deviant sexual predator. Now, they have had a criminal profiler on this case that has made some determinations. I'm not a criminal profiler. But, and they've made, but I just don't ever, I've never understood what they thought, goth look and heavy metal music, yeah. And so, yeah, Damien was the weird kid walking the streets. And so, these older people, they think, I'll never forget, I was babysitting some kids, and I picked them up from school. And I'd been to a funeral that day and had on a black dress. Kristen gets in the car and she says, "Oh my God, Amy, have you gone goth?" No, Kristen, I went to a funeral today. I mean, that is the, mentality of some people. Now, granted, Kristen's a kid, but anyway, you have these adults, these here in the Bible Belt, and Christians, and you see these goth kids, and you think that they are these satanic worshipers, and it's nothing but a fashion and a fad and a style. My own kid was goth. I wear black. You know? It's not that big of a deal. Hi, Annabelle. Oh, you're from Arkansas too, and from near there? Well, thank you for coming. It's wonderful to have you. So this, you know, this narrative starts with Damien. And that's what they built their case on. And when they got to trial, Damien's lawyers chose to put him on the stand. And that is what Damien threw out the seat. He smiled and waved at him too. You know, I mean, honestly, I feel like that it just shows what how immature he was back then, and some of the things that he did and that he said. You know, I don't think he thought that this was ever going to be a reality. You do, Annabelle? I have Almost Home, the first book that he wrote in prison, and it's autographed. But so they put this woman on the stand. I'm sorry, I was talking about Damien. You know, they put Damien on the stand and they ask him all these questions, and you know, they get into this whole Wicca thing and Aleister Crowley and Stephen King books and stuff, and to insinuate that he is a Satan worshiper and therefore committed these crimes. This is nothing but speculation and insinuation. And they ask him questions about, you know, what do you think was going through the killer's mind, and what do you think was how they felt and whatnot. Well, you know, I mean, it's pretty simple questions. I mean, that I could have answered. What do you think? Why do you think these people did this, or what? Or do you think they enjoyed it? Well, they must have. You know, they did it, didn't they? I mean, they must have wanted to do what they did. They must have enjoyed what they did. They must, you know. These were the answers that he was giving, and these were the answers that they used against him. As if he were the killer, and he's in the mind of the killer. Hey, True Crime and Coffee, how are you? But they put this woman on the stand named Vicky Hutchison. And she gets up there and she tells the wildest story about how Damien came and picked her up in his car and took her to this SBAT meetings and stuff, lying her ass off. Damien didn't even own a car. But told this big story about going to these SBAT meetings with Damien and him coming to pick her up and what went on at this meeting and all this. And it was this big, crazy story. please tell me that they did not truly believe that this woman was telling the truth. Because according to her, the West Memphis police told her what to say. And there's this big, ordeal about her being in trouble, and so she goes undercover and does this undercover investigation for the West Memphis police, and gathers all this information, and it sounds like it's one of the wildest stories you've ever heard. And her kid, who was the same age as Stevie, Michael, and Christopher, has told some pretty wild stories too. But the fact of the matter is this woman was straight up lying. And whether the West Memphis police told her what to say or not, did they really believe that this woman was telling the truth? Did they really believe that it's just so far-fetched? Damien was a broke white kid in West Memphis, Arkansas. Poor white trash is how he referred to himself. But yet he was this big satanic cult leader. It's just absurd. But a lot of the underhanded shit tried to, they, in my opinion, was done through Jason Baldwin. Now, Jason and Damien were tried together, and Jessie was tried separately. Jessie MissKelley, the whole thing about him was the false confession. But all the stuff that they did to Jason and in trying to pin this crime on Jason is extremely dirty. Because without Jason, the whole story falls apart. Their theory falls apart. Their narrative falls apart. Damien had to have committed this crime with Jason and with Jessie. Nobody else. So that's what, and I want to talk about some of the stuff that they did to Jason Baldwin. Could never. Exactly, Annabelle, and God love his trial attorney, Paul Ford. Paul Ford did not believe Jason was guilty either. He said, "There's no way that kid did this." They put Michael Carson on the stand. They needed somebody to say that Jason had done this, or that that Jason was there. That they had to they had to connect Jason to this crime directly. So they put this kid Michael Carson on the stand, who was a career criminal. As a juvenile, And he does this to basically trying to get out of trouble himself. So he gets on the stand and he says that he and Jason are playing cards, in this juvenile facility or whatever, and he just asked Jason, so, tell me the truth. Did you do it? And makes this claim that Jason Baldwin, who did not know this kid from Adam, did not know Michael Carson from Adam, just met him, confessed to him that he had committed this crime, and that he had done, that he and Damien and Jason or Jesse had mutilated Christopher Byers and done this horrific act on him. And Paul Ford, he, is really, this kid you've never met, and this kid that don't even know you is going to confess to you that he did this. Okay. Well, come to find out, I think that they knew Michael Carson was lying, because Paul Ford got a phone call from an attorney friend of his stating that Michael Carson is a liar. He's lying about what he's saying about Jason. And I'm ashamed to tell you this, Mr. Ford, but I'm the one that fed him the evidence. I'm the one that told him about this case and told him these details that he's getting up on the stand repeating, saying that Jason told him. So that's one of the things that, it's so obvious that he was lying. There was testimony from Dominique Tier's aunt, Narling Hollingsworth. Dominique Tier was Damien's girlfriend. And if any of you have ever watched the Paradise Lost trilogy, Dominique is the mother of Damien's son, Seth. She's the skinny, cute little redhead that Damien was dating at the time and had his baby and everything. Well, Miss Hollingsworth told the police that on the night of the murders, she saw Damien and Dominique out. And Dominique had long red curly hair, and Jason's hair was very similar, the popular mullet, and his hair was long and curly in the back. So the police kept trying to contradict her and say, are you sure it was Dominique? Are you sure it wasn't Jason? They look a lot alike. Don't you think it could have been Jason instead of Dominique? Blah, blah, blah. So the police were willing to pin a crime on Jason Baldwin that Dominique Tier and Damien Echols had maybe possibly committed. How do you like that one? I don't believe that Damien and Dominique did it either. But what I'm saying is they were willing to pin a crime that Dominique possibly committed on Jason. Because for some reason, Damien had to have committed this crime with his best friend, Jason. Under their theory. Then there's the infamous lake knife. Oh yeah, definitely, Annabelle. Then there's the infamous lake knife that they go and search this lake in this trailer park and behind Jason Baldwin's house, and miraculously in 30 minutes these divers find this big ass knife. Oh my God, this is... We found the evidence. We found the murder weapon. Is it a coincidence that this knife was found in the lake behind Jason Baldwin's trailer? This big sensational... Oh, they made a big spectacle of it. And Frank Peretti, the medical examiner, could not, no matter how hard they tried, could not conclusively say that that knife had inflicted the wounds upon any of these children, nor had it conclusively inflicted the wounds on Christopher Byers' privates. But yet you have John Fogelman in his closing arguments with the knife and an orange in court, making this big spectacle. Is it a coincidence that this knife was found in the lake behind Jason Baldwin's house? You see, when I hit this orange with this knife, it makes a cut and a dash and a cut and a dash. Just like the wounds on these boys. But yet, Frank Peretti could not conclusively say that this knife had inflicted these wounds. But yet John Fogelman, the prosecutor, is still preaching it, saying it did. About that. I'm so sorry, y'all. Then there's the guilt by association. And this was of Jason Baldwin. Because he was sitting there at this defense table with Damien Echols. And to quote Paul Ford, guilt by association is a dangerous thing. Just because you're friends with somebody or whatever doesn't make you guilty of a crime. In the trial, also, there was a necklace that Damien was wearing, and it wasn't until the prosecution had rested that they miraculously find this blood splatter on this necklace of Damien. So it was too late to use it. But they tested it and everything, and it came back that compatible with Damien's blood and compatible with Stevie Branch and Jason Baldwin. Now, I don't know what type of testing they did, but when they say compatible, still a little guy, what? Are you talking about Jason? Yeah, I became good friends with his little brother, Matt. He and I would talk on the phone for hours. But they came up with this, and with this necklace, and they said it was compatible with Damien and Jason and Stevie. So when they say compatible, that tells me that possibly they determined that it was, they all they were able to determine was blood type. Now, I have O positive blood. So does half the country. So just because you find something with O positive blood on it doesn't mean that I committed the crime. It doesn't mean that I'm guilty of anything. But out of John Fogelman's own mouth, yeah, it was blood type, not actual DNA. They never conclusively determined whether or not it was Jason's or Stevie's. They never conclusively were able to determine that. And because the prosecution had already rested, I mean, it was too late. But John Fogelman was willing to push the narrative that was Stevie's blood on that necklace. Oh, it was Stevie's blood. It was a mixture of Damien and Stevie's blood. That was the narrative that he was willing to push. So, you know, a lot of people, this is the point I want to make, because so many people have just ran with that whole satanic panic narrative that these guys did it, and that's end of story, and oh, they said this and they said that and they did this and they did that and blah 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 blah, and Damien's weird, and you know, end of story. And I've learned over the years not to argue with those people. You're never going to change their mind. I'm talking to you, Dolly. People like you. But the truth of the matter is, no matter how you look at it, whether you fully believe they're innocent or whether you are not sure, you're on the fence about it. There, and I said this on KARK News in front of our state capitol. There is too much reasonable doubt in this case to have ever convicted these three guys. And there's certainly too much reasonable doubt in this case to put a man to death. There's an old saying, I think it might have been a judge or somebody that stated this, that they would rather 100 men go free. They would rather 100 men go free than one man be wrongfully executed or wrongfully, or something to that nature. And you know, that's just what I want to get across to people. And this hearing today and denying the DNA testing is wrong. This is not what our legal system was built upon. But the state of Arkansas, it's not about suing anybody, and it's not about money, because that Alford plea, you know, negated any chance they had to sue the state of Arkansas civilly. And that's why they did it. Because if they had gone to trial and gone to another trial and been found innocent, they would have sued the shit out of Arkansas. But this Alford plea states that although you acknowledge that the state has evidence against you, you maintain that you're innocent, even though you're pleading guilty. So why deny these three men who are legally able, you say, to maintain their innocence? Why can they not fight for their innocence? Why can they not continue to fight for their innocence? Because this is what it's about. This is not some bullshit stunt to, you know, get attention or raise any kind of false funds, or, you know, or just a stunt by Damien, because he knows, you know, as stated per a Crama channel. And when you're innocent of a crime, the crime of murdering 3 8-year-old boys, and you're innocent, you know you're innocent, gotten no. Mark Byers is dead. These families have been living hell. So has Jason's family and Jesse's family and Damien's family. I've met Damien's mother. I've met his sister. I was friends with Jason's brother. I have talked with Gail, Jason's mother. The group that I was a part of bought Jessie MissKelley's family a new refrigerator. So, pardon my French, but screw a bunch of fake people who want to act like they are supporters and come clout chasing, saying, I'll help you, me and my team will help you, and we'll help you raise money, and blah, 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 blah. They don't need you. They don't need your money. They don't need your fake-ass bullshit. Damien, Jason, and Jesse have true, loyal followers. They have people who have followed them who have followed this case for years, who have supported them, who believe in their innocence, who have given to their defense fund, who have walked the Capitol steps, who have delivered letters to the governor, who have advocated for them, who I was supposed to have been on an expert panel to go around to different colleges talking about the case. This was done through UCA. But because I was a student at UALR, they could not get funding. The College of UCA could not get funding. It had to be all UCA students. You couldn't have a rogue ULR student on the panel. So I, they had to let me go from the panel, which, was fine. All I cared about was bringing awareness to this case. And if the state of Arkansas, who saw all of us in our Free the West Memphis Three t-shirts, thought this was going to end in 2011 when you let them walk out the door, when you made the devil worshippers sell their soul to the devil and make a deal with the devil of Arkansas. Ain't that some irony? If you thought this was going to end then, you were sadly mistaken. Tell me something. Would Judge Tanya Alexander or Judge David Burnett or Prosecutor John Fogelman or Detective Brian Ridge or Detective Mike Allen or Gary Gitchell or any of them, would you be willing to accept going to prison and being found guilty for a crime that you didn't commit? Would you accept that shit laying down? And if this were you that got out on this silly ass Alford plea, would you just be happy with your freedom and go away with still being technically on paper, as per the state, that you are guilty of killing 3 little boys? Would you accept that shit and go away? I don't think you would. John Fogelman talked about his son, his teenage son, who was same age as Damien and Jason and Jesse at the time, who wore black and all that stuff too. What if this had been your son? So today was the injustice goes on. Today the wheels of injustice in Arkansas just keep turning. Am I surprised? No. I'm not in the least bit surprised. Am I angry? Do I think it's fair? Hell no, I don't. Maybe that's why I don't, and I talked about this in my live yesterday, maybe that's why I don't understand what justice is, and who gets justice, and what determines justice, and, you know, is an eye for an eye justice, and, you know, it's just, it's a confusing thing. It really is. But they do plan to appeal the ruling. So no telling how long this, you know, is going to keep going on. It just makes me sick. And let us not forget that when Damien first started making these requests and asking for this to be done, West Memphis PD lied their asses off to him. Told him the evidence had been lost. Then they said it had been burned up in a fire. Then they got caught lying. And then they miraculously found it. Because Mara Leverett busted them all out. Lied. Plain Jane lied. Tried to keep him from getting this done. Why? Why do you want to deny these three men the possibility that they're innocent? All these people that take an oath and whatnot to be judges and lawyers and all this shit to uphold the law, and it's a goddamn joke. It's a joke. At least here in Arkansas, it's a fucking joke. Crittenden County, you are a wart on the ass of Arkansas. But you know what my hometown is too. My home county is too. You are truly a wart on the ass of Arkansas. But it doesn't end. This injustice doesn't end with the folks with Crittenden County. I mean, it goes all the way to the governor and the attorney general and whatnot. So it's the whole state of Arkansas that's done this. All because they don't want to be proven wrong. And you know, I got much more respect for someone that would come in to me and say, Amy, I was wrong and I'm sorry, than someone who wants to still sit and deny what they did and deny that they were wrong and continue to lie and cover their sins up. I would have so much more respect for someone that is man enough to come to me and say I was wrong. But the state of Arkansas is never, ever going to do it. And it's a shame. It's a shame to our justice system. It's a shame to our state. But most of all, 3 little innocent boys are never going to get justice. And 3 men who were kids at the time too are never going to truly be free. And that just sickens me and saddens me. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask me? Anything that you want to know, or exactly. Well, if no one has any questions, I think I'm going to wrap this up and take a shower and try to calm my nerves. Like I said, this is an emotional for me, because it's so near and dear to me, and it's just well, you're certainly welcome, this Sally My Jack, and thank you so much, Annabelle, for coming in. And I really appreciate everyone coming in and listening to me go on about this. I want the truth out there. And I want people to know exactly, the ins and outs of this case, and not be fooled or given, any kind of false information or false speculation by clout-chasing creators who don't know what they're talking about. Because this is serious. This is real life. These are people's real life. All these families involved, all these people involved, these children, have been through a almost 30-year nightmare. And there's may never be a resolution. And it hurts. It truly hurts. But I want to thank you all for listening. I want to thank you all for participating in the chat. Thank you, Griff, for, putting it out there to, so people can come to my channel and, hear from someone who's been there, and someone who has been a long-time follower and supporter and knows this case like the back of their hand, who's interacted with these people in real life. who's seen the pain, who's seen their tears, who's talked to their family members, who's cried with their family. Everyone have a wonderful night, and please be the change that you wish to see in this world. As Michael Jackson said, it starts with the man in the mirror. Peace out, everyone. Good night. I love you all.